Welcome to For the Record. I'm Janelle Hall. This morning we're talking about an issue that affects 1 in 8 of our neighbors here in Pittsburgh, food insecurity. A new Feeding America report released just a couple of months ago shows that number is now up 25%. When it comes to children, 1 in 6 are affected, up 33%. But help is available. I'm speaking with leaders at the Greater Pittsburgh Community Food Bank to talk about their successes and their challenges as we mark Hunger Action Month. And with the WTAE Project Hunger Day of Giving just days away, let's start the conversation now with the Food Bank's president and CEO, Lisa Scales. Yeah, let's talk about the Food Bank's mission and some of the work that you're able to do throughout the community to help people.
Well, our mission is to leverage the power of community to achieve lasting solutions to hunger and its root causes. And it's a fairly new mission statement for us, but it really focuses on people have the solutions to the issues that are impacting them. And that we're, in addition to providing food to people to nourish them, we're also addressing why people are in line at our food pantries. And so doing more to help stabilize people's lives.
I hear you talk about root causes. That seems like the new part, or part of the new part of the mission. What have you learned through doing some of that work to figure out why people are lined up to seek help?
Well, people are lined up to seek help because they don't have enough resources. They don't have the income to put food on the table every day. So it's really about income, resources. We still get over 100 phone calls every day at our Community Connections team. And when they're fielding those calls, people are calling because they're in need of food. But then we also find out they may be in need of enrolling in health care, or they may be having trouble paying their rent or their utilities. So it's not always one single issue as to why people are in need. It may start with food, but then we find out that there are many issues because, again, they just don't have the resources to pay all of their bills every month and really to cover their basic needs.
And what ends up suffering because of that?
Food suffers because of that. That's the one area, when you think of all the daily, the monthly bills that people have, you can cut back on food every day, right? But you can pay your rent or part of your rent, but eventually that will catch up with you. But food is the one area where people tend to cut back. Parents skip meals so their kids can eat. We've heard from seniors who are cutting their pills in half to extend them because their prescriptions cost so much, and that's because of the grocery prices.
Yeah, I was just going to talk to you about inflation. We talk a lot about that. What are some of the stories that you've heard with regard to that, and do you see that being a direct link for people lining up for assistance?
We are serving more people now than we did at the peak of the pandemic, which I believe surprises most people. But a large part of that is due to the cost of groceries. Half the people we serve are either seniors or families with children. And again, with the cost of groceries, they can't make ends meet. So they're coming to us at higher numbers than ever before.
I remember interviewing some people at the food bank, and during the drive-up distribution, there was a woman who said that she would rather feed it was either a cat or a dog before herself.
Yes, and we hear that time and time again. People want to take care of family members, including their pets, and they're really looking out for other people, and they're so grateful to get the food that we receive, that we provide.
So for people that have maybe seen video of this massive place that you have in Duquesne, that's the warehouse for the donations, what are some other things that you do to reach out to the community? Because you cover, 11 different counties?
We do cover 11 counties in southwestern Pennsylvania. And so we have a number of initiatives. We sponsored summer youth cafes this summer. They just ended, but we're already gearing up for a federal food assistance program that supports kids in after-school programs. And so we sponsor a number of those programs as well. We're out in the community. We're enrolling people in SNAP, formerly known as food stamps. We're connecting people to other resources. In 3 of the counties, Armstrong, Butler, and Indiana counties, we have a new initiative that we are facilitating a working group that's made up of a wide variety of partners, bringing people together. They're identifying the projects that they want to work on, and then we have funding from a local foundation to make that happen.
You always do a good job explaining the ripple effects of someone not being able to have that kind of nutrition and that food. Yeah. How does that spread out to other areas of their life, whether it's at school or at home or at work?
Well, when we think of kids and kids in school, hungry children can't learn, right? If they don't have nutritious food, they can't concentrate, they can't focus. And education is such a building block to ensuring a great future, allowing children to thrive, allowing all of our neighbors to thrive. That's really what we're focused on.
Can you, and I don't know if you have this memorized, how many people do you think the food bank reaches every year?
Every year, over 300,000 every year. Looking at everyone that we serve throughout our, not just the food bank, but our partners. We have 1,000 partners in our network. Many of them are food pantries that provide grocery items. Others provide a meal. I would say over 300,000 people.
That might surprise some people. They may be living next to or working next to or walking next to on the street someone who may be food insecure. They might not even know it.
That's right, Janelle. We interact with people. We see people every day who are food insecure. We don't know it. It's a hidden issue. It's not obvious who's food insecure and who's not.
Why is this mission so important to you?
Oh, because it's just a basic human right. Everyone deserves to have consistent access to nutritious food. When we feed people, we nourish their future so that everyone can live a productive life. That's so important.
Still ahead on For the Record.
It's an opportunity to inspire action.
More from the Greater Pittsburgh Community Food Bank and how you can help on the Project Hunger Day of Giving. Welcome back to For the Record. As we talk about food insecurity in Pittsburgh ahead of the WTAU Project Hunger Day of Giving on Thursday, let's go back to my conversation with Lisa Scales, the president and CEO of the Greater Pittsburgh Community Food Bank. And I know you wanted to talk about healthy food options that you also offer.
Yes, yes. You know, traditionally food banks would supply what we call shelf-stable items, those canned goods, boxed meals. And when I started the food bank many years ago, that was almost 100% of what we distributed. But as we have gone on this journey and continue to carry out our mission, the focus on nutritious food, fresh food in particular, and fresh produce has been central to our work. We want to ensure we're providing the most nutritious, the healthiest food to people. So we distributed more than 15 million pounds of fresh produce this past year. And when you consider other fresh foods like eggs and milk and meat, that makes up over 50% of our distribution.
It must feel like such a blessing to these people who, whether they come into the market or receive that in a distribution. Do you see that gratitude firsthand?
I do. I see it. Our network partners see it. I remember a person who runs a food pantry in Penn Hills. She was just gushing over the fresh produce we were providing that month. And she said people came in and when they saw it, they were in tears. They were so happy to be able to get that produce. And you know, fresh produce is expensive at the grocery store, and many communities don't have grocery stores. So for people to have that access to beautiful fresh produce, it means everything to them.
Let's talk about the food bank's approach to not only expanding access, but also eliminating barriers.
Right. It's so important to us because we know how hard it is to ask for help. And so we want to ensure that we're an inviting environment for people to come to us. And that includes in terms of language, right? So we serve a number of people who English is not their first language. It could be Spanish, could be Russian, could be Farsi. And so we want to ensure that we have the translation services available to serve everyone.
So they can come in and be able to connect with someone who speaks their language and knows how to help them.
That's right, through the apps that we use and the translation services, and then also with our locker system. You know, it's so easy for people to go online and create their orders, and then it's in the locker. They may be fearful that they come to a pantry and they won't be able to communicate with us because they don't speak English, but we have that opportunity that they can create their order and it can be put in a locker that they can pick up at any time.
Let's talk about some of the big programs that you have, whether it's Hunger Action Month or the Project Hunger Day of Giving.
Well, I combine them because Project Hunger Day of Giving is in September, which is Hunger Action Month. And so really it's an opportunity to inspire action. So whether that action is small or large, each action is one step closer to fulfilling our mission, and it all makes a difference. And so I believe that Project Hunger Day of Giving really inspires change. It allows people to come together and take action. And so grateful for our partnership and our partnership here locally and then with Feeding America for Hunger Action Month. It's really about raising awareness about the critical problem of food insecurity in our region.
And when I hear you say critical, do you think people are really aware of the level of severity that it's reached in our area?
I don't believe they are. I mean, I talk to people who come to our market, our on-site food pantry. I spoke to a woman recently who said she didn't even know if she could fill her prescription. She's a senior, and the cost of prescriptions, the cost of food, she said without this food, she wouldn't even be able to fill her prescriptions. There've been several people over the last month who've driven over an hour to come to our food pantry in the city of Duquesne.
It's remarkable to think about, you know, and it's sad to think about, but it's also inspiring to think about people like you who make a difference and the big team around you. You mentioned the market. I've had a chance to visit there and be there when it was opened. And what a special place. This really makes someone feel like they're walking into a beautiful brand new grocery store and they don't have to worry about the cost of anything.
That's right. They don't have to worry about the cost. It normalizes the experience. It makes them feel, if they're a mom and they have kids and their kids are with them, it feels like a normal experience of going to the grocery store. So it reduces or even eliminates the stigma associated with in needing food assistance.
What would you say to someone who may be at home saying, I think that applies to me? How do I know? What if I'm afraid if they turn me away? What will they ask me when I come? What would you say to them?
I'd say, I understand. It takes a lot of courage to ask for help. It's an unknown. You've never had to seek help for food. Please call us. Call us. I can assure you that you will be treated with dignity and respect. And we're here at your greatest time of need. We're here to provide that hand up.
Is there any other key things that you want to mention?
Well, this is truly a partnership. The support of the community means everything. And it really is about Pittsburgh at its best and Pittsburghers coming together to help neighbors. And that's what we're all about.
Thanks so much, Lisa. It's good to see you always.
Good to see you. Thank you.
Still ahead.
At the end of the day, we hope that everyone has the food that they need to thrive.
Another perspective from the Greater Pittsburgh Community Food Bank about what they're saying about the mission to help people in need. Welcome back to For the Record. The Greater Pittsburgh Community Food Bank offers help for people who need it, and not just when it comes to food. For more, I speak with Charlize McKinney, the food bank's Chief Program Officer. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. For people who aren't familiar with all the resources that the food bank offers, let's talk about ways people can get help from the food bank, both in person and also different ways that you extend help throughout the community.
Sure, there are a number of ways that our neighbors can connect to our services. So first off, we have our on-site food pantry called The Market, and that's located in our Duquesne facility. So it's like a little grocery store where you can come in and shop 6 days a week. If folks are not able to make it out there, we have a vast network of community partners throughout our 11 county service areas. So we have food pantries all throughout our service area that folks can connect to in that way. So you can visit our website, pittsburghfoodbank.org, and get connected in that way.
I want to say it's been such a pleasure to be partners with the food bank, and we've had the chance to come out and highlight the wonderful people that work and volunteer there and the different services. And I remember when the market opened, how beautiful it is, and it really does feel like you're just walking into a grocery store. So if someone's at home saying, I'm in need, how does that work? How do I just walk up and say, I need help? How does that work for someone maybe coming for the first time?
Sure. All you have to do is walk through the door and we'll take it from there. You don't need to say that you need help. Your presence is letting us know that you need help. And so really providing service with dignity and respect is very important to us, so we're always going to make you feel welcomed. We understand these are difficult situations, and we want to make sure people have a positive experience.
And what a wonderful thing just to be able to go up and down the aisles and not have to worry about cost and limiting the amount of things that they may be able to have to provide for their family. And it's more than just food in that market.
That's correct. So while we mostly have food, we have an aisle that has very important items that families need that SNAP benefits do not cover. So it can be diapers, it can be laundry detergent, it can be dish detergent, toothpaste, things of that nature. So anything that we can do to help alleviate the family's budget, we try to provide.
And you also talked about the way that you reach out to the community, because some people may not be able to have a ride to the Duquesne facility. And 11 counties is a big area to cover. So if someone lives, say, in Greene County and they need help, they go on the website, they can find like a local pantry, and they would be able to access that same kind of food.
Yes, they absolutely would. And then we also, if families are not able to make it out to one of the pantry sites, they can send a proxy in their place. And so they can have someone that will actually go and pick up those groceries if it's not convenient for the families themselves.
Let's talk about the need in the community. What do you think is some of the reason behind that need? Are you seeing an increased need?
We are definitely seeing an increased need. Of course, with the pandemic, the needs shot up. We thought that once we got over that hump that we would see a decrease, but we actually haven't. We're serving more families than we've ever served before, and that's mainly due to inflation. The price of everything is going up, so people are being hit from all different angles and really trying to find a way to make ends meet. So in addition to food, we're also working with other root causes of food insecurity. One of the ones that we're heavily focused on is financial instability. And we're doing that primarily through SNAP application assistance. And so families are able to get money for food and they can use their cash for other expenses. So we're working on the food side of things, but we're also working on some of the root causes as well.
Really beautiful to see and hear about stories of people who have received the assistance and then come back and help give the assistance.
People are always asking how they can volunteer and give back, because people are not looking for handouts. They want to be able to contribute. They just find themselves in tough situations, and that's why we're here to help. But many of our guests have turned around and become volunteers for us, and amazing volunteers at that.
Which is wonderful. Mm-hmm. You talk about the root causes and eliminating barriers. Talk about some of the ways that you have been able to do that and still hope to continue to do that.
So we always want to make sure that we provide a positive experience when our guests come. So customer service is top notch for us. We've also diversified the ways that we're offering service. So we have some limited delivery available for seniors through a senior box program. We have locker systems that we've put up in a few select areas throughout our service area, so families can place orders for the food that they want and they can pick up at the lockers at a time that's convenient for them. The other thing that we're doing is we're working with our partner network to expand the hours that we're available, particularly evenings and weekends. And then when we're bringing on potential new partners, that's a priority area for us.
For someone who may be watching this and they learn about the need, they see maybe an 800 number or a phone number that we do during Project Hunger drives or want to get involved, what would you say to encourage them to contribute in any way that they can to this meaningful cause?
Everyone's time is valuable and it helps us. Donations, financial donations, of course, are helpful, but also just getting the word out would be great. So if you know someone who needs help, please encourage them to reach out to us.
What's your hope and your prayer at the end of the day after you do this kind of work for the community?
At the end of the day, we hope that everyone has the food that they need to thrive, whether it comes from us, whether it comes from neighbors, but we just want to be part of the solution to get people what they need.
Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you, so happy to be here.
You're watching For the Record. More on how you can help neighbors facing food insecurity right after this. A quick reminder before we go, the WTAE Project Hunger Day of Giving is this Thursday, September 12th. We hope you'll tune in that day to learn more about how you can help your neighbors in need, your neighbors who are facing food insecurity. That's all for today's For the Record. We hope you have a great day.